a good
Will
idea. And since some people are going to log off at 12 o'clock, why not we start off? So we get
yes,
the
Yeah.
we'll
maximum
start
time.
off.
So,
Yeah.
hey everyone, this is Lakshman from 91 Springboard. Hope everyone is in good spirit. Thank you for being part of this webinar. And here you'll explore to recognize and avoid three conversation pitfalls that fail to create engagement and interest in customer conversation by Vikas Dandania. So he's here, and so the format of this webinar will be 45 minutes of Vikas's session and 15 minutes of Q&A. If you have any questions, you can put in the chat box. So he'll have a minute allotted to answer those questions, and he'll answer them in those time. And so this is this. If anyone has a question or anything related, you can text me directly in the chat box. Yeah, Vikas,
Yes, sure.
you can take it
Great. No,
over.
thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I'm just getting a couple of messages regarding joining. Let me just make sure it's not about anyone having difficulties joining. That seems good. That seems good. So guys, once again, thank you and welcome to the session. Lakshman, just rechecking that the recording has started. Yes.
Yeah, the recording is started.
Okay, great. Thank you. So how is this session divided today? It's divided into three segments. Each segment will deal with one sales conversation dissonance. And from a point of view of interaction, in the flow, if your question fits into the flow of the conversation, please feel free to put it in the chat box, or if you think interrupting the conversation is not too much of a disturbance to the flow, please do it, because an interaction is much better than just having a monologue and a one-way conversation. So or at the end of each segment that I finish, I will be giving a pause. You can bring your questions up at that point in time. Without much ado, I'll just get started now, and we will dive straight into what I think is the first sales conversation dissonance here. Right. So one of the most important aspects of sales conversation is being able to convey the benefit of your feature, benefit of what your business does to the customer. It's not so much about conveying the feature by itself. It's about conveying the benefit and letting the customer receive the message as what's in it for him. And that's the first dissonance. Often sales professionals are not able to do this very well. And as a result, it creates a gap, a dissonance in the quality of connect with the customer. And we'll examine this as we go through the slides now. And I will do this conversation in the backdrop of some basics of sales, right? Features, advantage, benefits. And I'd like to request you not to switch off by looking at these three terms. And we often think we know it, but when we go through some of the slides and through various conversations as a trainer that I've had, a number of people have told me, okay, it makes a lot more sense now. So just pay some attention here, and I'm sure you will take away something interesting. And I'm going to do this conversation in the backdrop of a new cycle that's come out in the market. Visualize yourself in context of purchasing this particular cycle. And I've listed out a few features of this cycle here. I don't want you to go through reading line by line or word by word, but just in a sense, take away there are 5 features. And if you look at them, the question that will come to your mind as a purchaser is, what do these features mean to me? As a buyer, do each one of them appeal to me? How likely am I to factor all of these features in my purchase? I want you to pay particular attention to the first 2 because we'll be going deeper into those, and here more closely on the second one. right? The feature shock absorbers with SFRD technology, does it really make sense to a buyer or to you as a listener? Keep that in mind as we go along. I will uncover or unpack my thoughts around presenting these features in conversation with a customer. Again, sticking to feature, advantage, and benefit, if we look at the first feature, which is wide body tires with grips up to 14 made of grade RI33 rubber from Indonesia, from the seller's point of view, what does it mean? From a seller's point of view, what it means is that these tires are supposed to be skid-free, create a skid-free ride even on loose gravel and sandy roads or sandy trails through woods and mountains. And they are supposed to last many more rides on rough surfaces. There is an element of durability. So there is an element of durability in this. Now, these become benefits only if the buyer perceives these as useful, or if the buyer is going to use this cycle regularly in places where the chances of skidding are high and frequent. In any business conversation, the feature and advantage component of it remain the same. What really changes in the engagement, the flow, or the outcome is how the buyer perceives the advantage or perceives what's in it for him. And that's extremely important. Just to complete the definition aspect of what feature, advantage, and benefits mean, the feature is something that is objective. It is descriptive. It describes the object, the tool, the platform, the software, the materials, the profile, the certification, the content. The feature only describes. It has no emotional adjectives attached to it. Things like long lasting, beautiful looking, deeply researched, etc. The advantage is when the seller perceives the feature will have a positive impact or will positively change his experience about whatever he is buying. The benefit is when the buyer perceives the feature will have a positive impact or a positive change experience. But when does a buyer perceive a feature as a benefit? The buyer perceives the feature will have a benefit for him when he has gone through a pain experience or he has experienced some frustration and unease. Once he has gone through that pain, frustration, or unease, and he looks at a particular feature, he is able to see how that feature will have a benefit on his life. He is able to then intuitively connect the feature to the benefit. And that's extremely important in sales. We should be able to convey our message such that the buyer is able to intuitively perceive how the feature will help him. What does this mean? And I want to go deeper into try and explaining what does this mean about intuitively being able to perceive the value of a feature. And I'm going to do this in the backdrop of a 2x2 grid that I have made. On the x-axis, I say we should plot the relevant experience of the pain or the frustration the buyer is having. And on the y-axis, it's the buyer's ability of abstract thinking, visualizing, and intuitively perceiving the utility of that feature. Most buyers go through this journey in this diagonal way, which means as their experience of the pain and frustration increases, they are able to visualize the utility of that feature more and more. There are certain buyers who will appear in this quadrant and this quadrant. We will focus on them later in the presentation. But the average buyer goes through this journey. Keep this at the back of your mind. I want to first take you through the different conversation styles that salespeople have. The different shades of presenting features and benefits. Different shades of articulation that buyers have when they present features and benefits to their customers. On one hand, sellers often just articulate the feature and expect that the buyer will resonate with the feature and understand what it means. So, a salesman of this cycle would probably say this particular cycle is made up of wide body tires with grips up to 14 mm, made of grade RI 73 rubber from Indonesia. And he may just leave it at that, expecting that the buyer will understand what it really means. But if the buyer has no prior experience of this of cycling, for him this would mean very little. Let's go through the rest of the types of articulation. Progressively, the seller may be a little more articulate and say something like, wide body tires with grips of 14 mm, made of grade RI 73 rubber from Indonesia, so that you do not skid and the tires last you long. That's slightly better and it conveys some value to the buyer. A smarter salesperson may go a little further and say that the wide body tires with grips up to 14 mm made of grade RI 73 rubber from Indonesia, so that you skid less even on loose gravel, sandy roads and mountain trails. And they also last many more rides on rough surfaces. Can you see that progressively this articulation means a lot more from the buyer's point of view? I have a fourth one here. The fourth one is a little more articulate than what we just saw. In this case, the buyer is conveying that the wide body tires with grips up to 14 mm made of grade RI 73 rubber from Indonesia. How will this help you? It will help you such that you skid less, even on loose gravel, sandy trails. Your rides are more enjoyable, less frustrating, as you can keep cycling for long stretches without slipping and without the need to dismount and walk. Now you can see that the seller here has brought in the emotional element. He's trying to convey how this particular feature will impact you at an emotional level. It'll make your ride more enjoyable and less frustrating. You can keep cycling for longer stretches without slipping. So somebody who has the experience of doing mountain trail cycling understands the frustration of dismounting the cycle, maybe carrying it on the shoulder every now and then, putting it and then climbing all over again. But if you have a cycle with tires such as with 14 mm grips, then it will prevent you from skidding and you'll be able to enjoy longer stretches of ride. And finally, I have a fifth one here. And the fifth one is kind of turned around to present first what is going to be the benefit. So it's in this case, you see the salesperson articulates, when you are out there cycling through the sandy woods or the mountain trails with lots of gravel, your rides will be more enjoyable and less frustrating. You can keep cycling for long stretches without worrying of slipping and without the need of dismounting and walking with the cycle for long stretches of time, because our wide body tires have 14 mm grips. And in a while, I'll talk to you on how this switch has a positive impact on the buyer. But I'm just taking a pause here and want to make sure you can see the different shades here. And as a salesperson or as people who have interacted with other salespeople, you experience these shades. of conversation. Okay, now I'm trying to map these 5 different types of conversations when a new feature comes out for your business in this 2x2 grid that I shared with you earlier. So when a new feature of your business comes out, the tendency of a sales person who is so attached to his features, his innovation, and he's so excited about what they have built as a feature or what they have created, the focus of conversations tend to remain in this area 1, 2, and 3 in the early part of the feature's journey. And over a period of time, the sales people engage with customers with a script closer to 4 and sometimes maybe even 5. And that happens because salespeople resonate with the buyer's ability to understand the feature. So if the buyer is responding by saying, hey, I have this relevant experience, I understand what you're saying, the seller opens up to describe more of his feature in a way and create an engaging conversation, and both the buyer and seller feel happy about it. However, what should it really be? So, in my experience, in the early part of the feature's journey, once it is released, the salesperson must bring a conversation type of 5, which is very descriptive, which brings a perception in the mind of the buyer as to how he will really benefit from that feature by creating a future picture in his mind, by creating an image in his mind, helping him relate to the benefit. You see, in a conversation style that is driven by 1, 2, and 3, there is very little drive to help the buyer see the benefit. Especially, you're not creating the context in which the benefit will be derived at that point. Since the feature is new, the buyer's pain experience or the frustration may not necessarily help him correlate to the feature. So you as a salesperson must have the ability to create the pain experience, bring out the pain experience in the mind of the buyer, help him see how that pain experience will be resolved by your feature. And as over a period of time, as buyers go through more of the pain experiences and are able to relate more and more to the feature through their ability to do the abstract thinking or ability to visualize how the feature will help them, they will intuitively perceive the value of that feature. At that point in time, you could reduce your long, winding conversation to something short. But if you go into new conversations with something short, where the buyer's pain experience is not very high and the buyer's ability to perceive the value of that feature is not yet there, you will not create an engaging conversation. So I just want to come back to this approach of creating conversation, which is at number 5, which is on the far extreme. And there are 3 components to this. The 3 components here are: first, you create the context in which that feature is going to be used. Then you share the emotional or the practical benefit the customer is going to enjoy. And then you present the feature. This is, once you create the context, the buyer's mind starts visualizing, starts relating to that context. And within that context, he positions himself that, oh, okay, this is the kind of emotional benefit or impact it's going to have on me. And once I buy in emotionally, that that particular feature is good for me, I as a buyer will relate to the feature that you are presenting. And that then in my mind sinks, okay, now this feature is important to me, right? And it settles down, the memory around it increases, the correlation to that feature and its benefit increases. And the buyer is more inclined to accept the feature that you have given and the big picture that you are building in his mind based on multiple small features and benefits around your product. So I'm bringing this slide back and taking a pause again to ask you, can you see why this long-winded conversation is essential to be done when new features are introduced and buyers' ability to correlate to that feature is low? Yeah, I'll just take a pause here because this is probably a new idea and a new concept for some of you. If any of you would like to unmute and ask a question around this or share a thought or an experience. Okay, we'll move on. And if you have questions coming on at a later point, please bring them up. Let's take this example once again in context of our second feature in the cycle, shock absorbers with SFRD technology. If a salesperson presented to you just the feature, shock absorbers with SFRD technology, and SFRD technology stands for sensitive frequency response dampeners, would that be motivating enough for you to say, hey, this is something of my interest? I'd love to buy this cycle, or I'm more influenced to buy this cycle because it has an SFRD technology. Or if the buyer takes that conversation, if the seller takes that conversation one step further and says, our cycles have shock absorbers with SFRD technology so that your rides are smoother and your purchase and your purchase is environment friendly as the SFRD technology does not use oil. You're beginning to get more and more emotionally associated, but my take is this is not completely, it doesn't grasp you emotionally completely to the extent as, let's say, something like this. When you are out there cycling through the rough mountain terrains or bumpy nature trails, your rides will be more comfortable for long stretches as all the numerous shocks transmitted from the continuous uneven surface would be absorbed by the highly sensitive frequency response dampeners. In addition, you could change or discard the shock absorbers without feeling guilty about the negative impact you would be making on the environment, as these dampeners do not use any oil, when in comparison to the hydraulic shock absorbers. So I just shared that as an example of the value of presenting your new features, especially new features that you bring, by first articulating the context in which it's going to be used, tying the emotional side of it, the pain, the frustration, or the natural benefit that it brings at an emotional level, and then citing the actual feature that it is associated with. This is just just a recommendation that every time new features come out, you should make you should go deep to make a documentation of a detailed nature like this, and that helps your sales team pick up how to convey the value of the particular feature to the end customer. So I want to wrap the first dissonance up by sharing with you how to overcome dissonance 1 in conversation. The common approach adopted by many sales professionals is that when features are newly introduced, buyers are in quadrant C, and technology-driven founders and sales engineers focus on conversations related to features, innovations, and the excitement areas. So if that's how the things are, what the customer is really looking for at that point in time is what's in it for me. How does this particular feature benefit me? How is this feature and innovation useful to me? So how do you bridge the gap? You bridge the gap by focusing on the benefit to the customer by triggering the perception. You make it self-evident, intuitively clear to the buyer. The buyer must be able to say this. I can see how this will really help me. And if you are not being able to convey that, you have not yet bridged the gap between the pain experience and the intuitive ability to see how that feature is going to create a benefit. Remember to use describing terms, to describe the context, use these words. Imagine you are in this situation, and then plant the idea of saying this is how the feature will help you. Okay. And finally, link the benefit to an emotion. And that's extremely important because as buyers, every purchase we make has an emotional side to it, an emotional component. That's really what I had for Dissonance 1. And to sum it up into 2 phrases, I will say that in order to overcome Dissonance 1, you need to help buyers intuitively link features to benefits. Make your conversations and presentations benefit-led rather than feature-led. I'll take a pause here and just in case any of you have questions, comments, or thoughts to share based on what I have shared so far. Lakshmanan, any? Hi, sorry, somebody was saying something.
This is Abhinandan here. You can hear me clearly?
Right. Yes, I can. Thanks.
Very interesting so far. I just had one question. So we are in a B2B space and we supply industrial minerals to industries like paints, paper, etc. So
Right.
your point is excellent. Do you feel this would apply to like products like ours in a B2B space as well? Because where the buyer is not a single entity, but rather a business. So you have various people coming into the picture. This would be the interface, but there'll be a technical team,
Yes.
etc., etc.
Yes. Certainly. Just that the nuances, the nuances are different there, and the complexities make it harder. But finally, all decisions are made by seeing both the commercial and the emotional benefit. And when I say emotional benefit, one in B2B sales, especially large, complex B2B sales, one aspect of emotional benefit is risk mitigation or the risk involved of engaging a certain type of vendor. So when I'm talking of feature here, also think of feature in terms of business feature, not just a technical or a product feature. So, for example, a business feature could be credit period, right? Or your ability to bring funding, loan, or something of that sort, or your partnership that you may have with somebody. All those elements, and you could be a first mover in from that point of view, right? You have a partnership with somebody. Let's say you created a warehouse somewhere to support the continuous delivery in a large for a large organization.
Right.
So that becomes a business feature, and if that's new in your market, right, convey the value of that in a certain way, which is more benefit led rather than feature led, saying that I'm creating a warehouse. No, say, just imagine you have now the continuous supply, and my supply will not break, or my delivery time is now reduced from this to this, whatever is the benefit, because I am creating this new warehouse partnership with this person in this region.
Understood. To summarize,
right? So,
we
and
have to convey, we first have to understand our own features which translate into benefits for the
yeah,
customer and be
yeah,
able to ensure that they are perceiving those benefits as well. Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And remember, if you're talking in an organization, there will be a commercial buyer, there'll be a technical buyer. So when you talk to the technical buyer, your engagement has to be more, passing on the technical benefit there. So if it's chemicals and somebody is, going to look at the chemical aspect of it in a deeper way, then you present that component more to him rather than you present the commercial component to the technical person or the technical component to the commercial person. However, it's still your ability to articulate and convey the value and the message in a short way. So to the technical person, you will convey the commercial value in short. To the commercial person, you will convey the technical value in short and not go deep into the conversation.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm happy to engage with you more in specific detail at a later point. We will be coming up with something called mentor hours in coordination with 91 Springboard. We'll share more details about that at the end of the session. So look out for those sessions, and then we can help you in a more detailed way there.
Okay, great, great. Look forward to that.
Thank you for that question. Very relevant, Abhinandan. Okay, so Lakshmanan, are there any other questions on the chat?
No, they're not questions. They're sharing their points on it. So you can go ahead with the next one.
Okay, now let's take a quick look at what those are, just in case there's
Sure.
any relevant comments to the benefit of everyone. Girish is saying we are naturally wired to take an emotional buying decision before applying logical justification to that buying decision. Your point 5 resonates with this behavior clearly. Thank you. Thank you, Girish. Thank you. Sunil says, I like the use of the 2x2 matrix. Thank you. The other comments are about the audio. Okay.
So that's it. You can go ahead with this one.
Yes, yes. So let's proceed to Dissonance 2. Dissonance 2 is about getting trapped in the forward moving pace or the tone of urgency set by the buyer. And I think we have all been there. Anyone who has tried to sell something for enough long period of time, we do encounter these kind of buyers. And we don't know at that point in time, we don't know what to do. Should I move forward with him? If I don't move forward with him, what happens? Do I lose the connect? Do I lose the opportunity? That whole anxiety, that whole unease just takes us over. And that doesn't create the quality of conversation we want, and it creates many dissonances from that point till the delivery. And often because that quality of conversation has not been that good, it even impacts the post delivery side of the relationship. So for me, that's Dissonance 2, and I'll just share more thoughts around it to understand what this really means. And I think this Dissonance 2 has become more pronounced in context of social media world. And as the social media world keeps on evolving, the buyer's journey in a buyer-seller engagement has also changed in many ways. The buyers kick in for a buyer-seller interaction later and later into the process, into the buying process. And if they're kicking in later and later into the buying process, what this means is that the number of face-to-face or in-person interactions for the seller has come down. The attention span has come down of the buyer in the social media world, and the opportunity available for the salesperson to influence the buyer has also diminished, become smaller. And what does this mean from our point of view or the seller's point of view when you look at it in context of the sales funnel? The buyer is kicking in somewhere there. The buyer is kicking into the conversation or reaching out to you with some sort of defined specs in his mind. And he comes seeking a pricing. He's done some research. He thinks he knows everything. He or she knows everything or knows enough to make a decision and move forward. He really wants to move fast and move forward and does not want a long drawn conversation engagement with the seller. So if you respond to the urgency set by the customer, here's what's going to happen. You'll have a poor quality of engagement. The demos that you will set will not resonate with the buyer. The value proposition that you will make will not be strong enough because you don't have a grip on the context within which the buyer is going to make a purchase. The secondary impact, your negotiations will be ineffective and you'll end up with lower margins in general. You may have those one or two deals that are not affected from a margin point of view, but in general, the margins that you will make on these kind of opportunities and deals will be much lesser. So, how can we overcome this dissonance? The thing to do here is ask effective questions. And my emphasis here is on effective, and effective doesn't come easy. It comes by being in the industry over a period of time, having picked up a lot of experience, doing deep thought, and then coming up with effective questions. Remember, we are living in a world where the number of face-to-face interactions are lesser than earlier. Attention span is down, the window of opportunity is smaller, and therefore effective questions becomes even more important, because in those short interactions, you really need to make an impression and change the buyer's attitude or behavior towards the purchase in a favorable way. So what does asking effective questions do? It helps you achieve three things. It establishes your knowledge and therefore your credibility. If you're asking the right and effective questions, it shows your knowledge about the industry, your ability to understand the different issues the customer goes through. And therefore it creates this feeling that, hey, this person knows enough. I need to listen to him. I need to try and understand what he's saying or why he's asking these questions. And I need to give him this input and information so that he can really help me improve my situation. Second, it gives the seller the context-specific insight. It helps the seller understand what's the context within which this particular buyer is wanting to make a decision or purchase or change his business, change his situation. Third, it provides you insight into the scale or the depth of the problem. What is the current impact the buyer's organization is going through? And asking effective question helps you achieve all these three things. Again, not easy. It comes by practice and preparation. And how do you ask these effective questions? In two categories broadly. Ask context discovery questions, which are generally more open and descriptive. So how do you plan on using these tools? So and so. Why do you need these tools now? What kind of change are you looking for? Can you see these questions help the buyer become more open and descriptive? And we also encounter buyers who are not willing to answer open and descriptive questions. In such situations, you could ask somewhat of a closed question where you put across the situation or the pain or some specific to the buyer and say, when you are in a situation like this, do you experience A, do you experience B, or do you experience C? And once you give the buyer some options, the buyer correlates to those options and starts the flow of conversation and engagement. And again, you can see that being able to
Hey, Vikas, I think your screen is frozen.
questions that you can ask. Okay, thank you. I went off on mute. Would somebody like to please tell me if you heard through all that I had to say on the first 3 points here? Girish? Yes, yes. Rishikesh has confirmed. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So I'll pick up the thread from here. The first category of questions that you need to ask is descriptive questions that help you understand the context of the buyer. And the second is something that helps you understand the current level of impact, pain, unhappiness, frustration that the buyer is facing. And try and make these numerical oriented. If you try and make this numerical oriented, you get a much better grasp on the level of pain and frustration, and that helps you understand the true nature of urgency the buyer has. We often encounter buyers with an attitude that, oh, this is really urgent, but once you have given the quote or the pricing, the buyer is not available to respond or take the conversation forward. So asking impact discovery questions, how often does this happen? How many units, hours are lost, or whatever they may be. Need to formulate the question such that you get a numerical value as an answer. Again, not easy. Comes with experience, thought, preparation. You must have a data bank. And then when you go into those meetings, buyer is in a hurry. You don't have time to ask 25 questions, and trying to ask a long list of questions also scares the buyer away. So you need to think through from those 25 questions. These are the 3 or 4 questions I'm going to ask this particular buyer. Okay. Why else is this important? I'm coming back to my example on the cycle and sticking with that, so I'm saying this also is important because it helps you to align to buyers' emotions and needs. Just imagine that you have 2 different types of buyers for that particular cycle. Somebody is looking for a cycle for riding in the mountains, and for this particular buyer who is an adventure freak, it is his way of like sweating it out and bragging. But there could be another person who is looking for a good sturdy cycle because that person is moving to a city which is full of potholes, and cycle also means something like something as a comfortable means of commute, and also addresses the person's green inclinations. Okay, if you have different contexts within which the buyer wants to make a purchase, it helps you understand whether you need to sell these 3 features as priority or these 3 to buyer 1, and which 3 you should sell to buyer 2. So asking context and impact questions really helps you decide which features are relevant for that particular buyer and helps you align your conversation, hold the attention and engagement. As you know, very often I have seen, especially in technology-driven industries, the excitement of sharing a list of new features is so high that we don't pause and think what is the most relevant feature conversation to be done in this engagement. The need for us to express our knowledge is so high in this, in this world where our chance of interactions are coming down and down and down. We feel the urge to present our knowledge, but we have to control that urge, make it specific to the buyer, because the attention span is small, the window of opportunity is small. So I want to summarize all that I have said on Dissonance 2. If the buyer is kicking in and asking for price proposal way into your sales funnel process, ask effective questions and move the buyer conversation back until you are sure you qualify the buyer in, you uncover his real issues and position your product favorably, you make the right demonstrations, you manage his risk perceptions well, and then you can effectively negotiate prices and improve your profit chances. And I'm summarizing Dissonance 2 once again with a guidance on how to overcome this dissonance. The common approach adopted by many sales professionals is that they flow with the speed or the tone of urgency or the forward motion set by the customer. They do not examine the context and the specifics driving the need, which impacts what? Impacts the accuracy of the solution that you're going to present, the revenues, the profits. What is the buyer really looking for in such situations? The buyer is looking for speed, definitely. He wants fast response. He is interested in a solution there. But underlying that, the buyer is looking for respect. I have done my research, please respect my knowledge. How do you bridge this gap? You bridge this gap by asking effective questions, and as soon as you ask effective questions, you are able to retain the customer's respect and enhance your credibility. You're not undermining the customer's respect or need for respect. By throwing in a few intelligent questions, you create a new sense of respect between both of you at that point in time. Remember, context discovery questions and impact discovery questions. What's the impact of doing this? You have more relevant demos, you have improved risk management, and you're in a stronger position for negotiation when you start closing the deal. Final impact, your profitability goes up. And that's the image providing that summary. Overcoming dissonance 2. Lead the engagement with effective questions to uncover underlying context and impact, even if this means going against the flow of customer urgency. Once again, I'd like to take a short break here and see if any of you have questions, comments, or thoughts around what I have just shared. Okay, Lakshmanan, any further questions or comments on the chat panel?
No, in chat panel, there's no questions.
Okay.
You can go ahead with the third one.
Thank you. Okay, we'll proceed with the third dissonance here. The third dissonance is using the same sales script on all buyer types. I think as one matures, one understands that you cannot have the same sales script on all buyer types, but do we consciously practice this, or do we just out of intuition, gut practice it? what's the impact of consciously practicing different sales scripts on different buyer types? Especially if you're running a small organization or a small to medium organization where you have like 3 to 5 or 10 salespeople, and you want their efficiency to go up. Do they have the ability to understand how to use different sales scripts on different buyer types? So that, according to me, is Dissonance 3. And I think among all the 3 that I'm presenting, this is one that I've seen, the one that has the biggest gap in terms of capability. And I'd like to go through this conversation using this model of innovation of adoption that was diffusion of innovation that was created by Everett Rogers a few years back. What he basically was trying to convey through this is that every time a new innovation hits the market, there is a set of people who will adopt it first and fast. He calls these the innovators, and then a few more. He calls them the early adopters, then the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards. And this is over a period of time. You'll see that the innovation will peak its adoption, and then it will die a natural death, by which time a new innovation hits the market in that same domain. But from our context point of view, the question I want to ask all of you here is, will the same sales script apply to each one of these categories? The answer is no. The question is, why? The personality parameters. Yes, the innovators have a different personality type. The early adopters have different needs and personality types. And the early majority also have different needs and personality types. And second, of course, there are economic variables. I may be an innovator in my mindset, but I may not have the money at that point in time to make a buying decision. So my decision will probably come at a later point in time. Let's go a little deeper into personality type parameters. The innovators are, by personality, they are venturesome, they are rash, daring, risky. For them, stability has less meaning. They're highly perceptive, quick to connect the dots. And the early majority are cautious, measured. They want to be sure of what they are doing. They value stability. They want to be seen as contemporary. So they will seek success stories before making a decision, and they will maximize the risk mitigation. Can you see these two personality types in your market? The early adopters are somewhere in between, right? They are driven by respect and opinion, being seen as opinion leaders. They are early. They are not rash, but they want to be seen as opinion leaders, especially from the mass market. Their self-esteem is derived from being ahead of the curve and being a credible opinion leader, because there's a huge mass of people who are not yet made the purchase decision of that innovation, not yet bought into that idea. So they are a balance of risk and stability. Now, I want you to visualize what kind of individuals and organizations these are, and what kind of individuals and organizations these are. Will you have large organizations here? No. Large organizations by nature, if they are a public limited company or very large company where multiple people are involved, by nature, they value stability. And if they value stability, they want to ensure risk mitigation. I'll come back with some more thoughts on that, but I just want to complete the flow here first. The set of people in late majority are basically skeptical. They are high on economic consideration, and for them, like numerical value proposition has little or no influence. Okay. Let me spend a little while telling you what the economic variable here means. And what I'm really trying to say on this slide is that those who are innovators will also make purchase decisions at a later point in time, innovators in their temperament and attitude. And those who are early adopters may also make, and in some cases, those who are in the early majority mindset may make decisions early on in the cycle as well. So while this theoretically, this curve is distributed into these 5 categories, you will have the mindset of different people making buying decisions almost at the same time. So as time progresses, you will encounter people with the venturesome attitude, people with the early adopter mindset, and people with the early majority mindset. And if that's the case, it's important to understand what are these mindset and purchase factors for these different category people in these different categories. So if the needle tilts towards the early adopters, you will find that they are entrepreneurship in style. They are driven by shaping and managing their own environment, so the views of people around them. Their quotient of aspiration, ambition, and being in the flow of contemporary experiences is high. Their vocabulary is wider. They take pride in their domain knowledge, so on and so forth. And those who are in the early majority side, you will see that they have a high demand on social and product validation. They want tried and tested stuff. They want testimonials, success stories. Often even they are willing to be influenced by celebrities. Okay, they are very process oriented. They ask for multiple quotations in B2B examples. They are feature to feature comparison. They brag about what? Value for money. I negotiated this really hard. I got a great deal. Yeah. These large organizations, all traits of larger and larger organizations here. Think of online shopping and you will be able to relate to this full cycle of experiences. How many of us really thought buying clothes online when that whole way of selling first started? No. Very few were venturesome and made that purchase decision quick. Right? Gradually, what were we looking for? Many of us, we were looking for, is this tried and tested? Yeah. We wanted friends to tell us. We wanted testimonials and success stories. We wanted celebrities to influence our opinion. So you can see here that this is the mindset of people tilted more towards the early adopters and innovators. And this is the mindset of people tilted more towards the majority or the later market. Finally, these large organizations make decisions extremely slowly. And that frustrates us, right? Especially as innovators, as entrepreneurs, it frustrates us. So I now want to bring this back in context of the dissonance in articulating your benefits. And you can now begin to see that the innovators, early adopters, and early majority, where they are placed in this 2x2 grid. Why is this important? It's important because your profit zone is here. And if your profit zone is here, before your profit zone depletes and gets divided with multiple competitors vying in for profit from that same feature of the business, of the domain, right? You need to be able to hold engaging conversations and win the trust and the business from that particular buyer. So to sum it up, overcoming dissonance 3 is basically about bridging this gap by having different scripts for different buyer types that you meet in the market. That's really it. What I have in in Dissonance 3. So overcoming Dissonance 3 is about focusing on the quality of customer engagement by using customized scripts based on personality factors of the buyer and the buyer organization. That's really it from my side, from a point of view of the 3 dissonance that I thought, the 3 most important dissonances that affect sales conversations in today's marketplace. And I'm now wanting to open the floor for any questions or comments.
Hey, Vikas, we have a couple of questions in the chat.
Sure. I'll just take a look. Okay, can we take a real life example? Okay, Sunil, we'll come back to that and see if we can try something. Let me just go to the next question. And if a person says he is in a hurry, how can we shortlist our questions, especially when we are into a new concept solution to the B2B industry? How can we identify which buyer is innovator, early adopter, or majority? Okay, let me start by answering the second part of your question. Is how can we identify which buyer is innovator, early adopter, or majority? I think the few things one needs to look for is how insistent that person is on, let's say, having case examples, success stories, so on and so forth. The more insistent he is on that, he is in the later part of the market. An innovator will not ask, or somebody who is bright-minded or shows the traits of being venturesome, the innovator's attitude, and closer to that direction, that person will not ask for, let's say, an exact product. He will ask for, okay, can you show me a broad demo? By the concept that you present, he is triggered and he understands that this is good, this product will suffice, it will solve my problem. From a credibility angle, the people who are closer to the innovation side will look more for personal credibility. Will look for, are you worthy of trust? The person who starts looking for being more, is your organization worthy of trust? What's the, are you registered with these kind of institutions? Do you have this, or whatever are related to the organizational side? Do you have ISO, blah, blah, blah? The more organizational or more demand the person has towards organizational parameters, is in the later part of the market. So you have to listen to what exactly the person is asking there. And of course, then you feel a sense of rhythm. Is he the kind who is bright and intuitive? When you present a feature to him, is he able to see the benefit faster or not? Or is he really going deeper and deeper into the technical aspect of the feature? Does he want a matrix, very detailed matrix? Yeah, somebody in the innovator side may also want it if it is extremely sensitive in nature, like it may be a cyber security issue, then yes, he definitely wants much deeper details kind of thing. So more you converse with the people, you'll get a sense of where the person's focus is. Does that answer your question? I'm
Yes,
sorry,
sir.
this is
Thank you.
Cooper. Yeah, okay.
One more question, sir. If a person says, if we are having a call with the person and he says that we are in a hurry, just wind up very fastly. So in
Right.
that case, what can we ask?
And that's never a good situation to be in. My first thought would go into what was the preparation that went up into that conversation. One, did you think through of all presenting first all the important things? One. Second, why did the conversation kind of flow out of context? You had a broad idea of how much you wanted to cover in that conversation, why it went off, and if it went off, is it a good sign? Because often when you do a presentation, it opens an understanding that, it opens a perspective to understand what the customer had not yet shared with you till that point in time. Right. So if the customer is kind of disengaged and telling you, let's wind up the question, let's wind up the presentation fast, not a good sign. But if the customer was engaged right through and say, okay, we need to wind this up fast, then the way to deal with it would be, okay, these are some things that are important to us. Can we set up another conversation or engagement that just like some of the previous part of the presentation triggered a conversation, maybe the second half of the presentation which we missed can also throw up some important stuff. Is it okay for us to set up another short call? So I would approach it like that. But if you're doing a first time presentation and it's a generic presentation and customer tells you to wind up and close fast, I really don't know how to give you an answer from a point of view of what's
Sir,
the best.
not the presentation, not the presentation. When we are having a first telephonic call with him, and
Okay.
he is not even really interested in listening to what we are saying.
Right.
In that
right.
point.
Okay, that is hard, and again there are different models and scripts to use in those kind of conversation and engagement, and there are different dynamics there. So what led to the creation of the call? Did he see a particular write-up of yours or a video of yours on YouTube or social media? So those are the contexts to keep in mind. And if he says close it fast, again, not a good sign. You close it fast by saying, then by respecting that that person's situation and saying that, okay, I'm going to send you this additional information by email, please take a look, and then I'll see if I can follow through with another meeting or conversation later at a later point in time. Highly likely he will not feel engaged, and you have to accept that. You have to accept that. There are these researches which have been done, which says that it takes 7 to 10 times of conversational engagement to get somebody who has never heard of you to become interested in you and start a conversation. And if he doesn't by that point in time, you disengage your effort of engaging him. You find somebody else to engage.
Okay.
So even if he disengages, you find another effort or another way to engage that person in a few days later. Because if he's disengaged, don't take it personally and feel that, oh, if I talk to him again, I'm doing something wrong because he disengaged very fast and he's not interested in me. And it's okay, he's not interested, because as I said, research shows there are 7 to 10 times you have to reach out with different quality and types of information to get that person to become interested in you. So
Okay.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I know we have run over time. Sorry, my apologies, Sunil. I can't think of a very specific real life example from a B2B context that can apply, conveniently for everyone's knowledge and understanding. But if you have, let's say, if you point me towards a specific situation, I can try and share more thoughts around it, Sunil. Otherwise, I'm always open and happy to have a separate one-on-one conversation with you at a later point.
Hey, so anyone has any more questions or anything they want to share?
Okay, so there's one last question I want to take up here, which says, does all this apply to cold calls? My take is not necessarily. Cold calls is a different ball game. It's it's completely different dynamic there. But what applies is some of the principles of keeping the person engaged. So for example, lead your conversation with benefit instead of feature in a cold call, because that will keep the attention higher, right? So that principle may apply, but again, what's the kind of product, what's the kind of complexity, how long or descriptive your context and benefits need to be, how you touch upon the corresponding emotion, that is something that you will really need to work on. But in principle, yes, lead with benefit, keeps the listener more engaged. I'll say yes to that. Again, from a point of view of dissonance 3, try and understand, very hard in one conversation to try and understand where your buyer is in that. Is he in the innovator category? Is he in the early adopter or early majority category? That comes by skill and practice, by remaining in the industry, by listening to many types of buyers. I think you just get an intuitive sense. So in principle, it will apply. If you find somebody who is showing the innovator mindset, you go faster. You give him short bursts of information and don't overload him with, okay, here's a testimonial. He may not be interested in testimonial. He's just interested in the product feature benefit at this point in time. And somebody who is going slower into the process, you throw, okay, here's a testimonial. It may make sense to him. Says, okay, I'll read it. Let's have a second conversation at a later point in time. So in principle, they would apply, but you need to think through a lot more in terms of how to apply it and make it work for you. Thank you. Lakshmanan, I know I have overshot. Over to you for wrapping up this session.
Hey, so I'll be sending a feedback form to everyone. There's one in the comment section also. You can fill that. That will help us a lot to understand how to go ahead. And also, we usually have something called as Mentor Us. So Mentor Us is one of our earliest programs at 91 Springboard. It is enabled like for one-on-one conversation, let it be for like startups or entrepreneurs, depending on various topic. So Vikas is ready to take a mentor us. So you can drop in your questions or anything in the feedback form. I'll get in touch with you more details of how we can go ahead with that. And thank you for all being here. Vikas, you have anything else to say?
Yeah, just a couple of things. In the mentor hours, generally allocate about 30 minutes, but we are flexible. If the conversations are engaging and we have not reached a conclusion in those conversations, I'm always flexible to add more time. Mentor hours needs the mentee to come with some specific things. Don't come in with a generic open question. Come with 2 or 3 specific things. I'm facing this kind of situation. How can you guide us, help us? Can you take us through some thought process? More than happy to do that. So yeah, look out for that, mentor hours, and we'll be happy to be of help. Lastly, at Bumblebee.Consulting, we can help you in these 3 ways, at least immediately. Customized sales conversation design that helps you overcome the different dissonances. At Bumblebee.Consulting, we also engaged as outsourced CSO for startups and SMEs. And we also make customized workshops to help you improve your sales and negotiation skills, proposal writing capabilities, and how to build engaging presentations, and how to create engaging virtual meetings as well with customers. So with that, thank you very much. I look forward to engaging with each one of you in due course.
Cool. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, you can get in touch with me. I'll be ending this call. Have a good day ahead of you. Wait, we have a message. Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Vikas.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Much appreciate your time and participation today. Thank you.